From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Ted Koppel in Washington.
Good evening. It is becoming a growing embarrassment for the Reagan administration. After months of denouncing Panamanian strongman Manuel Noriega for his alleged connections with the international drug trade, there have been daily hints and suggestions that Noriega was on the brink of being forced out of office and into exile. But the Panamanian general has proved a tougher nut to crack than Washington initially anticipated. Here's White House correspondent Sam Donaldson with the latest chapter in the story.
Like an old car with a worn clutch, the negotiations with General Noriega seemed to jerk backward and forward today in a way that added yet another note of intrigue to a process that is rapidly assuming farcical overtones. First came word from sources in Panama that the negotiations had broken off. One source said Noriega simply said no to the deal. U.S. negotiators were said to be heading back to Washington to report. Then came word from sources both in Washington and Panama that on orders of Secretary of State Schultz, the U.S. team had returned to the table, presumably with new instructions. President Reagan gave foreign journalists this terse bottom-line assessment of where things stand.
There has been no resolution as yet.
According to White House sources, the negotiations are continuing. There could be a deal anytime Noriega wants one, and the administration is not deterred by rising criticism of its offer to Noriega to drop the drug charges against him as part of the deal. For his part, the president seems to think that the negotiations do not have anything to do with Noriega's drug dealing. Here's what he said about Vice President Bush's public declaration of yesterday that he, Bush, would not negotiate with drug dealers.
I can see why the vice president said what he said, because the impression has been given that we are in negotiation somehow over or with a participant in the drug trade and all. And I think he was making himself plain that you don't negotiate with people of that kind.
But of course, it is precisely because Noriega is a drug dealer that the U.S. wants him out. At least that's what the president has said previously. But whether the current negotiations can achieve that goal is still uncertain. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, the White House.
Vice President Bush's remark about not negotiating with drug dealers was just one step in a cautious effort to distance himself from his boss. Politically, Bush must convince voters he's his own man and not Ronald Reagan's identical twin. At the same time, he can't break away too dramatically or he risks angering the president and losing important conservative support. Carol Simpson looks at Bush's dilemma.
George Bush was supposed to have a relatively easy time succeeding the man he has served so loyally the past 7.5 years. But lately, Republican leaders and Bush supporters have watched almost helplessly as storm clouds gathered over his once good prospects.
I think now they're getting concerned, as they should have been concerned all along. This is going to be a very close, very tough race.
During a 7-day campaign swing out west, Bush wanted to talk about all the Reagan administration's good news: low unemployment, a falling trade deficit, and an arms control agreement in the offing. But he could not escape all the bad news: the Iran-Contra scandal, the dealing with General Noriega, the Ed Meese controversy, and reports of astrology in the White House.
We've had a Teflon presidency. The successes the president has rightfully gained credit for, the problems appear to stick like Velcro on Bush.
The vice president, however, says he doesn't think he's hurt by the negative issues.
And it's been raised in the press over and over again, but the people are fair.
If the people are fair, it's not being reflected in the polls. Over the past 2 months, Bush's standing has plummeted. In mid-March, the Gallup poll had Bush leading his likely Democratic opponent, Michael Dukakis, 52-40. This week, the numbers were reversed, with Dukakis leading Bush 54-38. Some campaign officials have been clamoring for Bush to begin asserting his independence from the president. Bush took a step in that direction when he made his comments about not bargaining with Noriega. Late today, Bush took another step, meeting at his home with some of the nation's top black leaders. Bush campaign officials say in the coming weeks there will be more statements and more events which will show the voters the vice president is his own man. Carol Simpson, ABC News, Washington.
Last night we reported that the Secret Service was upset over a 9mm bullet which had been discovered on the floor of Jesse Jackson's campaign plane. Today the Secret Service acknowledged that despite vigorous denials yesterday, the bullet did in fact come from the gun of one of the Secret Service agents. Case closed. The administration was able to announce a major victory in the war on drugs today. Carlos Leder, accused of being one of the leaders of Colombia's notorious Medellin drug cartel, was convicted in Florida today of smuggling more than 3 tons of cocaine into the United States. Here's ABC's Mark Potter.
After 7 days of deliberations at the Jacksonville Federal Courthouse, the jury found Carlos Leder guilty of all 11 counts of possession, smuggling, and conspiracy.
This is a victory for the good guys, and by the good guys, I mean the American people.
And I think this has been an outstanding example of effective action against a major drug trafficker.
Drug agents say Leder was a smuggling pioneer who developed a clandestine air force to haul large cocaine loads.
Carlos Leder is to the cocaine smuggling business what the Wright brothers were at aviation.
For years, Leder infuriated the authorities by flaunting his power and basking in his notoriety, even heading a right-wing political party.
I'm fighting for the rights of my people.
Last year, Colombian authorities arrested Leder and flew him to the U.S. under heavy security to face trial. A trial in which there was testimony that Leder used this island in the Bahamas as a base of operations. As a result, federal authorities are now investigating allegations Bahamian Prime Minister Lyndon Pendling and other officials accepted drug protection payoffs. Pendling strongly denies the allegations and says the U.S. would be wrong to indict him. As for Carlos Leder, he may now face life in prison. Drug agents are enjoying their victory, but are also painfully aware that many large-scale traffickers still operate freely. Mark Potter, ABC News, Miami.
Operating under their new zero-tolerance program, customs officials last night seized the ship which found the wreck of the Titanic, the Atlantis II. Parts of 2 marijuana cigarettes were found on board. Now, customs officials are trying to decide what to do with the ship. In a moment, questions about House Speaker Jim Wright's financial dealings. And later in this broadcast, what happens when people with AIDS can't get insurance? And a mouse-sized superhero makes a comeback.
Missing numbers. This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by United Airlines.
There's a whole lot of airline behind every flight one of these makes. There's the largest aircraft maintenance center in the world. Mechanics and engineers who set a gold standard for the industry. One of the most advanced computer networks on Earth. And a commitment to flight crew training matched by no other airline. Behind every single flight one of these makes stand the 60,000 professionals of the Friendly Skies, rededicated to giving you the service you deserve. Come fly the Friendly Skies.
The Speaker of the House, Jim Wright, is denying charges of impropriety in his personal and business finances. The charges are being raised by the public interest lobby group Common Cause, which has called for a House Ethics Committee inquiry. More now from ABC's Ann Compton.
Speaker Jim Wright would take no questions one day after Common Cause asked the House Ethics Committee to hire an independent investigator. The questions revolve around Wright's personal finances and how he helped Texas friends before he became Speaker. Wright insists there is no financial conflict in the fact that his friend, a publisher who pays him 4 times the usual royalty rate on his book, also earns hundreds of thousands of dollars from Wright's re-election campaign for printing work. Wright insists when he asked federal regulators not to close down Vernon Savings and Loan in Dallas, he was only helping a constituent, Don Dixon. He was later charged with plundering the S&L. Dixon had often loaned his yacht to House Democrats for fundraising cruises. And there are the Fort Worth stockyards into which Wright has pumped $30 million in federal redevelopment money. Much of the land is owned by Billy Bob Barnett and George Malek, a close friend of Wright's. 9 weeks ago, Wright amended his House ethics forms to reflect years of income from Malite Co., an investment partnership formed by Malek and Wright. These are among the allegations that have attracted considerable attention, even a scathing editorial in last week's Wall Street Journal. Common Cause cannot trigger an investigation, but conservative Republican Congressman Newt Gingrich can, and says now he will.
In the sense that to the degree that the Speaker is a man willing to use power, he's a dangerous man to ask to be investigated because people are afraid to take him on.
Speaker Wright is the highest-ranking Democrat in the country, third in the line of succession to the presidency. His critics say if he were a presidential candidate, the investigation would have started long ago. Ann Compton, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
A new congressional report today warns of trouble ahead for the fund which insures deposits at the nation's savings and loan institutions. The report from the General Accounting Office says red ink at the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation more than doubled last year from the year before. More now from ABC's Stephen Ogg.
It's in Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma, the Southwest energy belt, where most of the nation's troubled savings and loans are, because when the price of oil plunged, their loans went sour.
There are 3,000 S&Ls. 2,000 of them made money. The other 1,000 of them lost about $13 billion last year. There are 500 of them that are insolvent today, and those 500 essentially are going to cost us $30 to $35 billion.
The Federal Savings and Loans Insurance Corporation would use the $35 billion to merge hundreds of insolvent S&Ls with healthier ones and shut down the hopeless losers. The FSLIC can raise $20 billion through borrowing, higher insurance fees paid by savings and loans, and selling off assets. The question is whether the other $15 billion will come from taxpayers' money. That's something Congress will have to decide. Stephen Ogg, ABC News, Washington.
In tonight's Other Money Matters, on Wall Street, stocks staged a modest rally after a two-day slide. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose about 7.5 points in active trading. A discouraging word for smokers today from the American Medical Association. New studies show all those programs like acupuncture and aversion therapy, which is supposed to help you quit smoking, are no more effective than good advice and encouragement from friends. As one researcher put it, there are no magic bullets. In our next segment, hard times for the Contras.
Up to $2,000 cash back from Subaru is worth more than the same money from anyone else. It's worth more because Subaru builds a rugged, reliable wagon that's the best-selling import wagon in America. It's worth more because Subaru's XT6 has the same engine design found in a Ferrari or a Porsche. It's worth more because the Subaru Justy is the lowest-priced four-wheel drive passenger car in America. Up to $2,000 cash back on a Subaru is worth more because it's on a Subaru.
You've got this all wrong. You want to make news of the cereal today, you need a gimmick. Putting a whole banana inside a little bran biscuit, stuff like that. These are just flakes. I don't think I've tasted anything like it. Simple, light, it's really very good. Well, how about that? A cereal that doesn't need a gimmick.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Corn Flakes?
Taste them again for the first time.
It tickles you so big, I tell you, it's... Ooh! I think it's gonna tickle you so big, you're just gonna...
My, what people are saying about Reuniti Blush. The taste that tickles you pink.
How can you help your home sell faster? Protect the major appliances. If your real estate company can't do that, then you're not listed with the right real estate company. Because you're not listed with an ERA broker.
Now that Soviet soldiers are heading home from Afghanistan, Moscow has confirmed today that 12,000 to 15,000 of its troops were killed during the Kremlin's 8-year military involvement there. Never before have the Soviets even approximated the death toll. With only 10 days before their temporary truce expires, Nicaragua's leaders and the Contra rebels are still at odds, this time over where to hold new peace talks. The Sandinistas want to meet in Managua. The Contras want to talk outside the country unless they can have unrestricted access to Nicaragua's media, a demand the Sandinistas have repeatedly rejected. 2 months ago, both sides in Nicaragua's civil war pledged to work out a permanent peace before the ceasefire ran out. But today, the outlook for peace seems as dismal as ever. Peter Collins reports.
With the guns silent, Sandinista soldiers are arresting, resupplying, venturing into former Contra zones to set up new bases, and hoping the ceasefire becomes permanent.
If the guns weren't firing, perhaps we could be home studying or helping our parents.
As for the Contras, things are bad. The failure of 3 rounds of technical talks means they've been unable to move into ceasefire zones where they would have been resupplied with U.S. aid.
The Sandinistas have tried to force us into a choice of hunger or surrender.
The problem is such, the U.S. is planning to send each Contra about $1 a day in Nicaraguan money so they can buy food from local peasants. Other hungry Contras are leaving Nicaragua and going back into Honduras. To comply with congressional restrictions, the food parcels they get are checked to make sure they contain no guns. To make matters worse, serious personal and political squabbles have erupted among the Contras. Some pessimistic U.S. officials say privately they believe the Contras are breaking up.
Well, we have some 3 dissident commanders. This kind of problem causes some confusion.
In Nicaragua, the same problems that drove the Sandinistas to the talks in the first place are worsening. The economy is a disaster. The political opposition is growing more bold. In response, the Sandinistas are arresting strikers and imposing restrictions on news media, despite promises of freedom of the press. In this May Day rally, President Daniel Ortega took a hard line. He called the Contras defeated mercenaries who must choose between putting down their guns or facing a much bigger, all-out assault. This has alarmed congressional Democrats who are swing votes on Contra issues. They are sending Ortega a letter warning that Congress may renew military aid to the Contras.
And we wanted to send a signal to Ortega that we were watching, that we were very concerned about what they were doing, and that they couldn't be saying one thing and doing another.
When the ceasefire began 6 weeks ago, it was hoped it would lead to serious talks about the future of Nicaragua. Now, with about 10 days left, the Contras and some key Democrats believe more pressure on the Sandinistas will be needed to achieve progress. Peter Collins, ABC News, Miami.
A new United Nations report says the world's population is growing by 150 people each minute. That's more than 200,000 people each day. The UN says vital natural resources are being overpowered, and if that continues by the turn of the century, the world won't be able to support its population. When we come back, AIDS and health insurance.
It takes time to get your gal to see the light. It takes time. It isn't always love at sight. From the first little glance till she's ready for romance. Remember, little man, it takes time. It takes time to make the coffee percolate. It takes time to get your gal to set the date. From the first moonlit walk till you get the baby talk.
Introducing the Elegance Collection from Citizen.
Yeah.
You're listening to the highest standard for telephone clarity, an AT&T phone. But what about cordless phones? The trouble is too many of them sound like this. That's why AT&T developed this new generation of cordless phones with clarity that rivals our corded phones. Now, when you can buy a cordless phone that sounds like this, or an AT&T cordless 52 or 5300 that sounds like this, the clear choice is the right choice.
Fat chance. Finding a faucet made as well as a price fister. After all, it's the one made in its own USA foundry. The one uniquely fashioned with a heart of solid brass. Start to finish, the quality is first rate. Furthermore, the cost is a fraction of what you'd expect. So why fiddle around? Get a price fister. The fabulous faucet with a funny name.
Of all the ideas cooked up to make life easier in the kitchen, there's one simple idea nobody has improved on. And now there's another. Reynolds Wrap and Reynolds Plastic Wrap. Make it right from the start.
Ace is the place.
Ace 7-Star, our best latex flat wall paint, on sale now for just $9.97 a gallon. Hey, quality makes a difference, and at Ace, they've got you covered. Hey, let me tell you, Ace is a painting place for me.
We have a report tonight on AIDS and discrimination. The Federal Civil Rights Commission held a series of hearings in Washington this week to investigate charges that people who suffer from AIDS have been the victims of discrimination in employment, housing, and perhaps the most devastating financially, insurance. As a result, people who desperately need medical help find themselves without the insurance to pay for it. More now from ABC's Ken Kashiwahara.
Exhaling. Los Angeles yoga instructor Billy Porter has AIDS and had health insurance. His insurance company canceled his policy, claiming Porter did not disclose previous illnesses not related to AIDS, such as swollen glands 9 years ago. After Porter spent 16 days in an AIDS ward, the company refused to pay the $40,000 hospital bill.
It makes it very hard to worry about, not only the treatment, but can you pay for it?
Luis Mara's employer had to battle for 3 months before Mara's insurance company agreed to pay his $200,000 medical bill. Mara died 5 days ago.
For a while, I was afraid to go to see any of my doctors because they weren't being paid.
In Florida, Joel Starkey discovered his policy limited AIDS medical payments to $15,000 over a lifetime, while paying up to $1 million for cancer and heart disease.
By having to fight the disease, it takes a lot of energy. Then to turn around and fight discrimination is almost like a double jeopardy, a double whammy.
Gay rights groups say the problem of discrimination and insurance companies refusing to pay AIDS claims is increasing. The insurance industry says it must protect itself against those who try to buy insurance after they're exposed to AIDS.
Lots of insurance companies are saying, well, we don't like the kinds of people who we think are getting AIDS, so we don't want to pay for their claims. That's prejudice. That's pure and simple prejudice.
We have done our share without restriction, without discrimination. We stand as the first-ranked payer for the costs of people currently with AIDS.
Simply obtaining insurance can be a problem, too. This New York hairdressing salon says it was denied a policy because the insurance company said hairdressing is a hazardous profession. Clearly, the implication is that all hairdressers are gay. In San Francisco, David Hurlburt sued the Great Republic Insurance Company because the company required only single males without dependents that are engaged in occupations that do not require physical exertion to answer additional questions, including, have you suffered from a sexually transmitted disease or immune disorder? That, says Hurlburt, is illegal discrimination against gay men.
They are trying to determine whatever way they can. In this case, it was a very unsophisticated way. Who's gay? And if you're gay, you're not going to get insurance.
Great Republic has since withdrawn the supplemental questionnaire and admits discriminating against someone based on sexual preference is illegal, but says it was not doing so.
I have no objection to insuring people that are gay at all. I simply do not want to insure people who have already the symptoms of AIDS.
The problem, however, is not limited to gays. Catherine Murphy's husband died of AIDS. Now her insurance company has refused to insure not only her, but her 2 sons who were born before their father contracted the disease through a blood transfusion. The reason for the denial? Residing with someone who had a communicable condition.
I was very angry, and I was very sad about it. I just felt like there was no end to AIDS in our life.
So in life and in death, fear over the skyrocketing cost of AIDS has become infectious and often as debilitating as the disease itself. James Litzenberger spent a year battling his insurance company over payment of a hospital bill. He filed a lawsuit and gave this videotaped deposition.
They give you all this runaround and hassle and what, I mean, who needs it,
Litzenberger died 2 weeks later. Ken Kashiwahara, ABC News, San Francisco.
We'll be back in a moment.
Dramatic savings now at Color Tile's fabulous floor sale. Every in-stock ceramic floor tile, every in-stock parquet, every in-stock Armstrong Sundial Solarian sheet vinyl. Save up to 50% for 4 days only. Come to Color Tile and bring the beauty home.
Sometimes I don't know what to believe. What food's good for you, what's not. But I guess I can believe reports from the National Cancer Institute. They say some studies suggest a high-fiber, low-fat diet may reduce the risk of some kinds of cancer. So I made some changes, like eating Kellogg's All-Bran. Just 1 tablespoon of All-Bran has more fiber than a whole serving of most other cereals. Am I going to change what I eat for breakfast? You better believe it.
High-fiber Kellogg's All-Bran.
Oh, no. Uh-oh.
spills clean up fast with the cordless Hoover Double Duty. Dry spills and wet spills, too. The Hoover Double Duty. It eats, drinks, and makes a great gift.
Where's Charlie?
So how's your new lawnmower?
Great. I've wanted a John Deere all my life. Out there first thing this morning. Done in no time. Where is he?
I've had my John Deere rider for years. Never had a bit of trouble.
Mine started this morning like the first day I got it, and it's 7 years old. So what's keeping Charlie?
He doesn't have a John Deere, does he?
Nothing runs like a deer.
Tonight, a special 2020 devotes an entire hour to what you can do now to live longer and feel better. Slowing down the clock. A special 2020 tonight.
Finally tonight, an unlikely matinee idol for a generation of yuppies. A lot of us remember this particular character from our own youth when all we demanded from a superhero was adherence to truth, justice, and the American way. As ABC's Beth Nissen reports, today's fans want more, and they found it.
Hurry up! I have a job to do!
He did the job countless times in the late 1950s, battling arch villains, rescuing Pearl Pureheart from his dastardly rival. Like a lot of others, Mighty Mouse dropped out in the 60s. He flew off the air in 1966. But now the resilient rodent is back on Saturday mornings on a dastardly rival network, and he has millions of grown-ups tuning in to watch what is one of the campiest half hours on television.
Help, Mighty Mouse! There's a train coming, and this ceramic Abe Lincoln will be smashed for certain.
Here I come to save the day!
Like many of his viewers, Mighty Mouse is now middle-aged.
I'm tired.
He has problems with relationships. He suffers from job-related stress.
Too much hero stuff now, and you'll be a limp, wasted, twitching wreck.
Mighty Mouse has fun with that whole yuppie genre, right? Yuppies love to laugh at themselves, but they take themselves so seriously the rest of the week. Saturday morning, I'll give them a chance to feel human.
Ralph Bakshi is the cheerfully bent mind behind the new adventures of Mighty Mouse. An animator and painter, Bakshi is probably best known for his X-rated cartoon feature, Fritz the Cat, which was denounced as subversive when it hit theaters in 1972. The new Mighty Mouse also gleefully subverts order and reality in the best tradition of cartooning. The animation contains strokes of Disney and Dali, Pollock and Picasso.
And there is no purpose of cartooning except to have fun with and to poke fun at, which is the origin of the whole medium.
And what can we expect from Mighty Mouse in the future? Bakshi says he'll get married to the fair-eared Pearl and will try to balance family and work. A true superhero for the 80s. Beth Nissen, ABC News, New York.
That's our report on World News Tonight. We'll be back later this evening with Nightline. I'm Ted Koppel. Have a good evening.
From ABC, this has been World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.